Welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst radio network. All past shows are available as podcasts. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. Please send us your questions, comments by email to dj@ArtistFirst.com. Here they are, your co-hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Z-Man, and I am Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
Yep, she's Margaret, and you have to let it all go.
Indeed. All of it.
Fear.
Yes. Fear.
Doubt. Disbelief.
All of it.
You have to free your mind. Well, that's what we're going to talk about tonight, aren't we?
Yes.
In some respects. We're really not talking about freeing your mind.
To understand that you can actually be trapped in your mind. And most people, that's a wild thought. What do you mean trapped in my mind? I can think anything I want to think. But have you actually examined what it is you think about?
Well, there's a scary thought. It's a vast wasteland, but there are interesting bits. But beyond that, being trapped in your mind. In one sense, we are, all of us. I hesitate to say the word trap, but we are all sort of under within the confines of our mind, or as Tolle says, the whole universe is really what you experience within yourself. You, all of us, contain a universe. The collective interaction of us with each other and with our surroundings, the common dream, is all really experienced within you, your particular personal universe. And if you allow fear to rule that universe, or if you allow your thoughts to be ruled in any way, shape, or form, you're limiting, you're in essence putting up a blocker to true experience, and substituting for it a construct, and if that construct is made out of fear, or made out of things which are anticipated, because fear is all about the future rather than real, you're not actually living. You're not actually truly taking in the world. There's a huge filter in front of it. It's a filter on experience, and it's a filter on reality.
Well, okay. So you're looking at it saying how you become trapped by fear?
Yeah, well, I mean, earlier today when we were talking about this, I thought you'd said to me that this becomes, in essence, a stricture, particularly fear, becoming a stricture upon one's mind or upon one's experience. And so the wonderful quote that we just did here, The Matrix, is evocative of that. Of course, it was a movie, and it was a popular sort of a science fiction thing, and it's actually the outgrowth of that concept comes from far, far before the movie. That idea that is the world real, or is it a construct? And the other day, when we were watching something by Tolle, he mentioned something sort of similar in passing. He said, people look at the world and think, well, is there anything really outside of my own mind? Is it all just, in essence, a creation of my own? Am I the only thing in the universe? Does the universe begin when I open my eyes, and does it cease to exist when I close them? And he said, well, let's not even talk about that. Because I don't think he believes that or would espouse that. But philosophers over the centuries have
He basically said he wasn't talking about it because it's such a vast subject. And
right.
He was answering a question at that point.
Right, but I also believe that from other things that we've, looked at from him, that he doesn't subscribe to that idea, in the sense of saying that the universe doesn't exist except within me. Rather the other way around, that consciousness encompasses the universe rather than the universe encompasses consciousness.
Right.
But consciousness, a wonderful concept, can certainly be completely placed into into fetters by the mind, and also by what influences the mind, by fear. And so that's sort of what we were going to talk about tonight. Not just that you have to free your mind, but that in fact many people live in a construct of their own, which is really made up of fears.
Yes. The filter that you decide you're going to look through is usually a mind filter. Because if you took in every single thing simultaneously, you usually go into overwhelm.
Definitely.
So your mind is set up to take certain things into account and bring forth what the mind believes is important. So there is that show that is I forget now who makes it, but it's called Brain Games.
Yeah, Brain Games. Yeah.
And it shows your bias, the way your mind actually thinks, how it disregards certain things, how it fills in certain things that aren't there because of the experience that it has. So it says, okay, no, this is actually what you're trying to communicate. So you see this word, which isn't really there. It's sort of intimated. So your head goes, oh, no, it's got to be this word. Or scanning things, and the things that are in the far distance, unless they trigger something in the back of the head, like it's a threat, usually just sort of blur. Like when you're looking at there was a picture, and in the foreground the gentleman's standing there, but in the background is a building, and in the building on the 5th floor in the window was a cartoon character, which pretty much didn't register until someone pointed it out. It's like, well, that's back there. So understanding that the mind is filtering in terms of being alert, but the underlying thing is dangerous, which leads to I might get hurt, which leads to fear. So to understand that is sort of a baseline or subconscious program running in the back of your head, taking that into account and then beginning to expand your consciousness so that you understand that there is this sub-program running in the back of my head. Now, people have a tendency to want to say, well, if that's what I'm doing, then that's what's important. So I have to be really, really good at being able to discern whether or not that's dangerous or not, because I can project in the future because I'm learning from my past. So you're sitting there going, well, okay, who exactly is doing this? And if you find that it's your ego, there's a good bet that it has to do with control. Your ego wants to be listened to. So if fear is the way that I get attention, And I'm going to start throwing things in front of you so that you can see that this is fearful. So I need the control. Give me the control. I can see the fear. You didn't see this.
Right. And that's used oftentimes by people to control other people because it makes them feel powerful, that I pointed out something you should be afraid of.
And giving that any weight or credence is the question. How much do you give that person, or even yourself, your way of thinking? How much weight are you giving that part of you that wants to keep pointing out the danger, the danger, the danger, the danger? Because what happens with your body system is that it can't tell the difference between real or perceived danger, future danger. It goes into stress responses.
Well, inferred danger. Yeah. In other words, yes, danger which is not present, but yet could happen.
So, looking at yourself, and you realize that you've been really stressed. Have you been doing that? Have you been doing that to yourself? Have you been doing that to others? Danger that you feel, well, we should look at this. We should look at this. We can't disregard this.
We should worry about
it. And you have evaluated it, hopefully, or you need to evaluate it to really make a judgment call for yourself on how dangerous this actually is. Is this person telling you, where is the information coming from? What is the issue? What is the real issue? Or is it just falling back to pay attention to me because this is dangerous?
Well, and it becomes a Chicken Little kind of thing, doesn't it?
Yes. To realize that there's a part of your mind that's Chicken Little.
The sky is always falling.
You have got to identify that part of you if you wish to have any peace in your life. You must identify that part of you. It's easy to say, oh, well, that person is making me afraid. It's like, no, you're taking it in and accepting it. Just like Chicken Little.
Well, and as you said, Chicken Little was doing it to gain attention and be important. It's also, the other parable is the boy who cried wolf. But in that one, the second one, it's more about trust. And in Chicken Little, it is more about, the sky is falling, so pay attention to me. I'm important. And being the harbinger, we all know people like that, whose basic MO, their modus operandi of every day is to tell you what could go wrong. And in essence, to announce at every potential possible opportunity what the latest calamity is, no matter where it is, no matter how far away it is, no matter how unlikely. And there's even shows literally dedicated to this on TV. A meteor strike could happen at any minute. How likely is it? 1 time in 1 billion years, but you should worry about it.
Well, it's indulging the mind.
Yes.
By saying that since this is a fearful thing, let's learn everything about it.
Yes. And there's a whole cottage industry based on that, not just on meteor strikes, but on just future-proofing yourself against every possible thing, and then running around telling everybody how future-proofed you are and how much they should do what you're doing, the whole insurance industry is based on that.
Right. They have all the statistics.
All the statistics, and and the whip that's in the hand of these folks is oftentimes, well, if you have this and you never need it, well, that's fine. But if you do need it, at least you have it. And at the end of the day, they're selling fear. and also selling this mindset of, well, you have to pay attention to this because this could happen, and this has happened to 4 out of 5 adults with this kind of, tooth decay. So it is a very powerful appeal to what you said before, which is this part of our brain, which evolved over millions of years and is part of every, animal on this planet, which is the survival mechanism and the fear scanning mechanism, and the better you are at predicting what could possibly happen, that this predator might jump out off of this tree and get me, the better your chances in a very dangerous world of surviving. So, applying the principle that if you survive, you get to pass these traits on. These traits became part of all of us. We have this part of us, the chicken little part of your brain, which is constantly looking for the falling piece of sky. However, as you also said, if you indulge it, it will, because it gets sort of a hit, your brain gets various chemical hits. And there is a chemical hit, a dopamine hit, about avoiding danger and being powerful and telling people that this could happen and that could happen, or you're telling yourself, and this is totally, that you have a voice inside your head that's constantly telling you what could go wrong in this situation. And that voice becomes louder and louder the more you listen to it, the more you feed it. And it certainly goes from survival to ego. It becomes something which wants to be fed and wants, in essence, to create these situations where it is needed, where suddenly its advice was very important and powerful, that you have to listen to it and act upon it. And so it becomes a stricture, a matrix.
Well, when you make decisions based this way, you pretty much begin to make this shield around you, because you're saying, okay, I'm pushing away all the danger. I'm pushing away all the danger. But when you realize you're surrounded completely by a 360 shield, you have to also realize that you've just imprisoned yourself in this bubble of fear.
And it's a self-made prison.
Yes.
And you can see it turning into a neuroses, turning into a psychosis, turning into obsession.
Pretty much with that kind of shield around you, what life are you actually living? Because, let's face it, you can convince yourself out of fear that the possibility of going into a situation, a relationship, let's say, could happen, but you could get hurt. So you take the line of safety, which is not why you came down here, although experiencing what that is also important. Realizing it's a very lonely place. You're just in this world of your own making, instead of interacting with the world around you and seeing, experiencing what it means to be human, living here, interacting with people or situations, or even just experiencing what it means to be in a human body, walking. I think it's very interesting because once you get the walk down, you got the balance point, you figured out how to move this body forward, there's a general, okay, now I know how to walk, I know everything about walking. But you've not necessarily put your consciousness in every aspect of that movement. It's a very interesting meditation. That's why walking meditation, having a body go through that with the consciousness participating, going through a walking meditation, you become aware of things you were probably aware of when you were little, when you're trying to figure out how to walk. But it gets put into the, oh, well, okay, I know how to do that.
Well, I think you went down a different path, but I think where you started there was good. The whole idea of walling yourself in, becoming not just comfortable with a fear-based matrix, but finding it that, in essence, it feels it's safe in here, that now I don't want to experience a relationship because I might get hurt. I don't want to, and it can turn into, what we're seeing in the world today, where people are obsessively doing things of one type or another. And even, there's a certain thing called Stockholm Syndrome. And what that means is that you're put into such a stressful situation where you're entrapped, that you internalize the imprisonment, you come to terms with it. And then when you open, it's a caged animal too. They open the door and try to let this animal who's been caged his whole life free, and take away the cage, but the cage is still in the mind. The animal still, in this particular case I'm thinking of, was I believe a bear or some large predator. Tiger. And the tiger was in a cage its whole life, and the cage was a certain size, 30 feet, let's say, and would go back and forth in the cage. Well, they removed the cage, set the tiger free, and it walked 30 feet and turned around at the invisible wall, which was in its mind. Well, that's what people, if you listen obsessively and wall yourself in and make this prison, you can come to terms with it and feel like, this is my world, this is my side, this is all I want. Everything else outside is too dangerous to deal with. So then you free this person. You say, oh, well, all those dangers are gone. Everything you'll touch will always be wonderful. Just go out, and they cannot get outside. It's too scary now just to leave the bubble. And so the bubble is now no longer physical, no longer actually powered by any real threat. It is taken root and draws its power of confinement from your own mind, and now you can't get out of it. Now, taking people out of that kind of a psychosis, that kind of neurosis, takes many years. Can take therapy, can take drugs, and yet it was built brick by brick, piece by piece, through this constant reinforcement of fear. How do we get into it? It's almost insidious. It's almost subtle in this sort of, it feels like this is the right thing to do. Oh, this was dangerous. This hurt me. Well, I should pull back. I should find a way to shield myself from that. I should buy more insurance. I should wear a mask. I should wash my hands obsessively. I should do all these things to be safe. But then one day they say, well, that danger is gone. One day they say that you no longer have to, wear this particular type of protective gear. Well, once you've internalized it, you may say, well, I can't. I feel unsafe now, even if there's no real danger, because the danger doesn't have to be real anymore.
Right. Right. No, it's exactly so. We are creatures of habit. And to form a habit consciously is very different from an unconscious habit. And it can be done. That's the other thing that humans in general need to understand. You can change your habit form. You can change your mental habit form, whatever the bias may be, one way or the other, because it's based on fear. But you must become aware that you have this habit before you can change it. If you're not aware of it, you're grasping it in the air. There's nothing for your consciousness to grab hold of, to see. The consciousness must see what it is that you have or do not have, what is controlling you. Once you become aware of it, then change can start. But the other part of that, too, is internally, are you aware of what's motivating that habit form? The motivation of the habit, sometimes, if you think about it, you've got these layers. It's the habit form itself, it's the action, and then what is motivating this? You need to go deep internally and truly become the awareness that you actually are. Your spirit can do this. Help your soul see this. And then you can make a change.
Well, I mean, what you're speaking about there is exactly right. But I think the key word, and we wrote this a little bit, and we'll probably get up on the website, is discernment. People often put the opposite of fear. They say, well, it's courage. You know, the opposite of fear is courage, and that's true in some regards. But the antipode, the thing which will get rid of fear, is discernment. Discernment means, as you said, awareness. And how do you get there? And maybe we'll talk about that in the second half hour. But how do you get there is the key. Discernment is something which, if you start in awareness, you don't feed ego, you don't feed fear. But if you've already walled yourself in, you're not lost. You can get out of that, but it takes an event to expand your awareness. And maybe we'll go back to the studio, and on the other side we'll talk a little bit more about how we extricate ourselves from this wall of fear and matrix.
Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief, Dev, is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers. Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
Hi, this is Hannah Ruth from the band Wild Hum. Check out our new Americana Soul CD, Wild Hum, at our website, wildhummusic.com. And you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lynes.
Thank you very much, Z-Man. Tonight we're talking about, I guess, fear in one regard, but we went out at the bottom of the last half hour talking about, people who have walled themselves in with fear, have basically made fear into a prison that they've become comfortable with. And you had begun the sort of the process of how you get out of it, the moving meditation, the discernment, the awareness. And I think we should just pick up right there.
Oh, yeah. If you've recognized that there is a form around you, a habit form of fear, the only way to really take steps out of that is to acknowledge that you yourself are not choosing fear any longer. You've got to choose something else besides fear or worry. Coming back to the habit form, whatever it may be, and actually sitting there and looking at it. Sometimes a lot of this is because fear itself has been pushed down so it can't be seen anymore. And you have to be able to sit with it, to see it. Because most people say, oh, no, I'm pushing it away, It's like, this is still a part of you. Pushing it away means you're pushing a piece of yourself away. And you can never get rid of you.
No matter how much you might want to.
Right.
I'm reminded a little bit of the one of the tiny monks that we have seen over there, where in essence he had spent a large part of his young life being fearful. He was maybe inordinately afraid. And his meditation, if you will, his way of coming to terms with his fear was to accept it, in awareness, accept it, say, well, there's the fear that, become aware of it, look at it plainly. Yes, I'm afraid. And perhaps there's nothing that really can be done except to allow the fear to come in for a period of time. Don't, as you say, push it away. Accept it, experience it. Make it not something which you have to wall off and that you have to find a lot of ways to combat.
Taking it in, though, doesn't mean that it is in charge of you.
Right.
Okay? You've got to be the awareness that is in charge of that space and that time and of you. taking the fear in means that you've made a space for the fear to be able to sit in, but you do not allow it to take hold of you.
Right.
All right, that's very important.
And his way of doing it was to observe it. When you say accept it, it's right. It's very easy to say, well, what you're really doing is becoming afraid. No. As we said a couple, 3 shows ago, making a space for your emotions and realizing that you're vaster, you're greater than your emotions. Well, fear is a big one for a lot of people. Fear is something which they feel overwhelms them, that compels action, that compels this kind of defensive mechanism that puts you into this, sheltering against my fear and letting it rule my actions. And
well, it's understanding that you have taken fear in and used that as the center point or the foundation of building your shield.
Right. But
the whole frequency is made on fear.
Right. But what I was saying was your point, which is that instead, rather than do that, make a space for it from which you may observe your fear. And now you've made a very important distinction. You've allowed fear to have a space, because it doesn't, like many emotions, it is impossible to stop it arising, especially from, and this we talked about earlier in the last half hour, the fact that your mind is always scanning for potential threats. And they can be now many things, not just the immediate, like tiger in the bushes, but many things which trigger that mechanism, and fear blossoms in your psyche. It rises. If you allow it to overwhelm you, you're like a stick in the ocean or a stick in a raging torrent. You no longer can do anything except be buffeted by fear. But what we're saying in this instance is give fear a space which it can fill, within which you can see it, understand it, observe it, and don't allow it to don't become it. Don't live in fear. Let fear have a space, have its place. Note that it rises, that it crests, that it falls, that it goes away. And that portion of you puts you outside the fear, allows you to be the consciousness which has a place for fear.
In other words, you have to process the fear.
Yes.
To allow the part of you that is holding this, because emotions in general must be walked through. In other words, they must move through you. You can't hold to them, which is an interesting thought, because most people want to hang on to certain emotions. Yeah, I'm never going to let that go. It's like, well, you're going to be stuck in that period for a while, which means you're bringing that up to the present moment.
There's something interesting there, and this goes back to Ekman. When he would say that when people would hold on to a fear or to an emotion, fear could be one of them, anger's another, some others. If you hold on to it and try to stay there, in essence, it literally has a physical effect on your mind, on your brain chemicals. It causes pathways to be burned into your mind, and it becomes, he said that ossified fear becomes almost like a constant state of terror or anxiety, or even low-level fear is anxiety. Ossified anger becomes this sort of pent-up rage, which is always ready to shoot out. So and sadness becomes depression. These immediacy emotions, which are important, you should feel afraid sometimes, you should feel sad sometimes, angry sometimes. If you hold on to them, they literally warp physical things in your brain, in your endocrine system, in your whole body systems. They can cause physical changes, physical disease over time. So the very important thing you just said is that you have to let them, of course they're going to come, but you have to let them flow, come in, go out.
You have it to be comfortable with feeling the emotion, But the discipline is not reacting to the emotion, because most people just roll that into one lump.
Mm.
You know, I'm feeling this, I'm angry, so therefore I lash out. It's like, no, you don't have to do that. You can feel it and then let it go. But you have to be able to be conscious at that point. The minute you take it in and hang on to it is when things go awry. You are focusing on the emotion as opposed to focusing on your consciousness or your awareness, understanding that you created the space by which you will operate. You decide. The emotion can be there, the fear or the anger or whatever, the doubt, whatever it may be. It's there. And you experience what the incident may be, but then it's like, okay, that's what it feels like to be fearful. This is what it feels like to be angry. This is what it feels like to be sad. But allow that to pass through you, because that is not who you are. You are more than that.
So what we've put here, that really discernment is the key for all of these things, in the sense of awareness. And the other thing you just said, in allowing this thing to be, but not holding on to it, whatever it is, whatever the emotion is, gives you a perspective. It gives you, this is who I am. I am a vast being which has emotions, has thoughts, has feelings, has experiences, but yet all this is encompassed in me, and all this has a place in me, and none of this is entirely me. Rather than allowing a piece of you to take over the whole, to focus all your energies upon the emotion, or all your energies upon thoughts.
Also not concentrating on categorizing how many experiences were sad and how many experiences were
yes,
making it angry. There's a part of the mind that wants to categorize things and catalog things. And you have to be aware of that as well, because that will slip in and say, okay, well, I know what this is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't know.
Well, those words, the I know words, and you're in the thought and the ego part of you when you're saying I know and I have and I will and I do. Now, because let's say you've done this already. Let's say for many years you've lived with fear overwhelming you, with thoughts categorizing things like that. So we talked just briefly on how to get out of that, and you mentioned one thing, which was a walking meditation. But there are also other opportunities, even in your completely insular fear wall bubble, where you think nothing can touch you as long as I stay within this. The experiences of life may crack right through that, and the opportunity when you have something which takes you completely out of your experience, that no matter how solid your fear bubble was, your shield was, goes right through it. These are oftentimes existential crises, a disease that is now life-threatening, a tremendous life-changing event, whatever it may be. And at those moments, you may feel that all the things that I did, all the walls that I built up, are broken. I'm completely lost. I'm completely at sea. But that is actually an opportunity as well to be in awareness, because you can also take from that, nothing that I did protected me from this. There is no protection. I have to understand that this was a construct, and it was in essence a lie, that I could somehow do all these things and be safe. Like if I had all the right insurances, that I would never have have a problem. I've had all the right doctors and all the right medications and all the right this and all the right that and wash my hands 5,000 times a day. Nothing will ever happen to me. But then something does. And that is an opportunity as well to go into awareness. You have to say, in this great crisis, there is also the truth, the light of truth shines in and says, yeah, it does happen. Even when you have all the right insurances, bad things happen. And that's a way to get out. It's sort of people would say, well, that's a terrible way to get out, but it's sometimes the only way to get out if you've really walled yourself in. It's that reality intrudes.
Well, you need to come to the end of yourself.
Yeah.
You will always look at something and try to judge it according to the base matrix you've set down. So it functions here. It works for me here. It works for me there. See how this worked? This worked really well.
Mm-hmm. That's the mind.
You've got to come to the point where there is no answer. Absolutely no answer. When you ask the mind, all you hear is crickets. Seriously.
Right.
No answer. And that's when you realize you've just gone past it all. This is such a devastating experience that it blows it all out of the water. There is no foundation. I thought I had the foundation. It doesn't cover any of this. It doesn't cover how to take care of someone who isn't supposed to be dying. What do I do now? And that's what you get is crickets.
It's crickets. It can even be less existential things. You've read every book about childbirth, and then you actually have a child. Well, all that quote unquote, insurance. Oh, I read every book about it. I know everything. I know all. Suddenly, then you're presented with the actual reality that you have no clue on how to handle this. Well, it wasn't in any of the books. Crickets. The mind's like crickets. Oh, wait. Yeah. I don't know. I got nothing. And you have to actually experience. You have to actually then discern. You have to look at this life that you now have complete and total responsibility for, that's looking to you for everything, and say, who are you really, and who am I, and how can we form an actual relationship, which has nothing to do with the 5,000 books you read, or all the advice you got, or all the no. Now it's you and the other, and you've got to be what they need, and you have to actually do it, not read about it. And that is it is existential in the sense that there are lives involved, but it is experiential in the truest sense. You are really on the line here. The rubber is really meeting the road. You are not reading about it. You are doing it.
You are in the experience. Do you open to the experience, or do you try to tell a story about the experience to yourself? That's the question. Is that the habit form you have? Is that you look at something and you immediately start telling yourself a story about the experience that's in front of you? Or are you actually in it and allowing the newness of all this to wash through you, so that your consciousness can expand out and see things you have not seen before? It's a very interesting byplay, because telling yourself a story because you know is all based in fear. And do you acknowledge it? Can you let go of that habit form of entering into something so completely new? You have no foundational base. Can you just make room for the fact that this is so completely new? that I have got to rely on my heart connection to that which is eternal, to God, to love, the things you know go past all death and life. Do you have that kind of a connection? If you don't, I highly recommend doing it now, while there is no pressing need.
And part of it, and really the basis of it, is to allow awareness, to practice that in small things, so that when something that is actually important comes up, that you'll be trained in it.
You will have the beginnings of it, but I will warn you that reality will blow every concept away.
What, certainly, and the thing that often is done, that people often do, is substitute knowledge for experience, in the sense of like we were just saying, you read about something, or you hear about something, or you think you know how something's going to go, and all these things are mind-based. All these things are, in essence, trying to future-proof yourself against actual experience. I mean, I'll be trained. I'll do all these things, but and the analogy comes in that if you are trained to fight in a battle, in a combat, or in a war, all your training is there, but then the first shots are fired, or the first punches fly, and in that exact moment, you are no longer able to rely upon training. You have to rely upon your internal instinct, your heart, your actual discernment, your ability to live in that moment and experience it and be in it is far more important than trying to remember what page 47 of the manual said.
So the word training that you're using is a mental kind of read thing, as opposed to, because when you physically train and you are in a fight, you rely on that reflexive, trained response.
Yeah, I can see that fighting in that regard, but I mean that when the first actual experience comes in, oftentimes no amount of book learning can, thinking about how it will go can substitute maybe for physical training, or certainly for the actual fortitude to carry forth and to do what needs to be done. I don't have this experience, but you do. Knowing or hearing about childbirth is very different from actually going through childbirth. It is an indescribable, or rather, there's no way that you could tell me, however many times you could tell me, that what would actually make it that it would be as though I had had the experience of childbirth. Right. Because not only am I not equipped physically for it, there's no way there's no words or even physical sensations that you could give somebody else that would make them understand what you went through. Similarly, you could write about it, you could give all this advice, you could tell everybody, give 1,000 lectures, but it would never codify and actually transmit the experience that you went through, your individual experience, and how you had to deal with whatever happened to you. Turn that around. In essence, what we're really saying here is that no amount of thoughts about the future, your fear shield, can truly protect you from what will actually happen and what you will actually have to do in that moment. So the fear matrix is more than just a cage. It's also a lie. It's truly something which can cripple you in the actual moment of actually having to have an experience, because it gets in the way. It's telling you, well, on page 47 we're supposed to do this, or I'm supposed to stir it this way, or I'm supposed to breathe. Well, right at this exact moment, none of those things work. You know, and you have to go internal. You have to go, what you just said, go back to source, go back to God, go back to your internals and say, what does this moment require of me now? You're in the moment of now, and it's just you. And the experience is yours and yours alone, completely unique in this exact moment. And you'll never be able to tell it to anybody. You're just going to have it on your own.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
You go through your moment and breathe.
We should take a breath and we should go back to the studio because...
Yes, I believe we have reached the end of our show. So, I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for listening.